Hello and welcome back. This is the Sunday review. My name is Joe Greenwood and there's two fights that we're going to be talking about on this fine Sunday morning. It's currently 7:04 a.m. and your boy has been up watching SummerSlam from WWE. And he's decided just to stay up, watch Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz, which I will be talking about first, and then Cory Sandhagen versus Rob Font, the main event from the UFC Fight Night on Saturday night. Listeners, let's just go straight into it. Let's talk about the absolute nonsense that is Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz. And you know what, listeners? I know what you're thinking. Yeah, Joe, you know what? Give it to them. Give it to Jake Paul and his nonsense and all that. You know what, listeners? I'm swerving you, brother. I'm swerving you hard early on a Sunday morning. You say I'm easy like Sunday morning? No, I'm hard like a corner. Listen, Nate Diaz, fool. Absolute pure fool. A man that I'm actually not bothered about watching him fight anyone in MMA or boxing at all. No interest. Not going to pay for it. Nonsense. And here's why. I quite literally watched a man wait to win rounds late in a fight so that he could score a moral victory. And he basically said as much in the ceremonial weigh-ins for his fight against Jake Paul. Now, I'll get into the X's and O's of the fight in a moment, but when he's in the weigh-in saying like, I don't care, win, lose, draw, whatever, blah, 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 he doesn't care if he loses, then what am I paying for? Like, this is competition, this is high-level sport, in theory, and you're telling me that it's not sport to you, it's just turning up and I just have to watch a personality contest? It's tedious to me, this sort of thing. I find it, frankly, rather boring. You know, the cult of Diaz is one that is beyond worn out, is not interesting anymore, and frankly, I'm glad that I don't really have to watch it. And really, the only reason I watched it was, well, I was up anyway, and I felt like recording early in the morning for you, dear listeners, because I want you to know how angry I am by this nonsense. I'll continue with my thread on that afterwards. We actually talk about the fight. And it was essentially Nate Diaz trying to score a moral victory and Jake Paul actually trying to win a boxing match, which is quite a damning indictment there that actually Jake Paul was the athlete in there and Nate Diaz was the YouTube celebrity personality type. Like, if you told me which one was which, based off of what they said and what they did, it'd be the other way. It'd be the wrong way round, whatever that means. And is it the wrong way round? I don't think it is. I think one is a competitor and the other one isn't, really. Diaz is beyond washed. Like, he's washed. His MMA boxing is not good in boxing. And we saw that in the first round where Paul just walked into him, cracked him, and you could see Diaz just struggling. Like, his chin wasn't there, his feet weren't underneath him anymore, and just couldn't take the sort of pummeling he was getting. Paul, by the way, lovely jab, fully extended, pushing right through. And it wasn't just like, there's something that you see with guys that are like getting into it where it's like they land a jab or a punch, it's like, oh, I've hit him, and then I pull it back. And instead, like, hit him and you sort of have to like push through to completion. You know, you have to like extend the arm fully through, even if you've landed on them. So you've got to just keep that pushing through. And he was doing that, whereas Diaz was just like, let me come up to him, all right, I'll flurry on the arms, maybe someone will come up and then I can open up for an uppercut from there, which just wasn't there early on the fight. Obviously, as the fight goes on, Jake Paul gets a bit more tired, a bit more ragged, those uppercuts come in there, and when Diaz starts doing that, actually brings him into range for a Jake Paul left hook, which is what he landed that dropped him in the fifth. It was a left hook that he sort of hid and disguised around Nate Diaz's right arm, and it caught him on the top of the head, wobbled him, threw his equilibrium off, and down he went. And that was kind of like the big moment of the fight. Like, yeah, Diaz came out and he started doing his regular nonsense of like, oh, I'm pretending I'm hurt. Boring. Okay. He's sort of waving him onto the ropes. Boring as well. It's a boring, tired out shtick. It's a bit of like a sad, old circus vaudeville thing. And frankly, I found it quite interesting that Sean Porter on the commentary, you could tell that he was a bit like baffled at how much people were still enjoying Diaz, even though he was quite clearly losing the fight. Yeah, Sean, that wasn't competition that those people wanted to see. They just wanted to see a guy do some mugging for the camera, basically. Like, imagine if Diaz actually came out there and, you know, did like proper boxing and tried to box properly. Like, would those people have actually been happy? You know, and he lost a decision victory, but it was a lot closer. You know, he wasn't trying to do his moral victory nonsense. He was like actually going out there to try and win. They would have been furious. Like, they would not have wanted that. Like, none of like the weird little showboating, mind games nonsense that gets people into thinking that he's won something. Oh, well, if this was on the streets... Well, it's not on the streets, is it? It's in a ring with a referee and judges and cameras filming it and an audience that have paid money to sit there and watch it. So it's not on the streets, is it? If this was on the street, we're not on the streets. I dislike that argument immensely. If we were on the streets. Well, we're not. You know, if my aunt had a penis, she'd be my uncle. Okay? Like, what are we talking about here? We're talking about sport. And that was not sport from him. If you're willing to pay for that, then more fool you. You know? Is it because you just want to see it? Like, why? And then you're thinking, Joe, you watched it. Yeah. How many pennies left my bank account to watch that? That's right. 0. I just don't get it. I do not get it. And then he wants to go back to the UFC and compete in MMA. I mean, this whole thing of him fighting Jake Paul in MMA is just not going to happen. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous, farcical. Awful. Truly awful from Nate Diaz. And then on the Jake Paul side, like, really, what's the question here? Is what, he's going to wait for Tommy Fury and do a fight with him? KSI? He's never going to fight a real boxer, is he? Like, you know, he's just not. Unless he can get the perfect, washed fighter for his division when a title becomes vacant. You know. Until that happens, he is not going to fight a proper boxer. And that's fine. That's fine. But on the MMA side, I mean, like, if it's the thing of waiting for MMA fighters, is there anyone else out there for him? I mean, he's probably hoping, like, Conor, mate, just blitz through those last 2 fights on your contract so we can get in there and make some money. Like, that's probably what he's thinking, right? Like, that's what he wants. Yeah, I'm just kind of a bit of a loss to what the whole angle is now. But, you know what? Fair play to them. Press on into that. And I will continue to watch it without paying for it. Cheers. Right. Let's talk about the actual fight from Saturday. The main event of UFC Fight Night. Sandhagen versus Font. Yes, that's right. It was Cory Sandhagen versus Rob Font. Disappointing. I was talking to my regular co-host Tom Ballum, who is not present, as you can hear, about this. And I was like, well, you know, Rob Font, maybe he can, you know, integrate some of the interesting things he had from the Yanez fight, where, you know, throws the jab and if he misses it, it's fine. You can get the collar tie from there. Sandhagen shut all that down. Wrestling. And you know what? It won him the fight. Says he might have torn something in his elbow in the first round, so he just went to the wrestling. Fair enough. He did it very skillfully. It wasn't desperate. Like, he got a lovely takedown in the first and second by just retreating and pulling Font into him and getting the takedown from there, getting in underneath. There was a really nice one, I think it was in the fourth, where he got like left hands disguising the punch, coming in low, and then getting in a right hand behind Font's left knee and getting the single leg from there. Really good. Font just didn't have the means to get up. He got close with a couple of them. He used like a Kimura sweep in the first round that got them up, and he sort of held on to the Kimura as they got up so he could keep him close and maybe throw hands on the break, but it just wasn't there. And in the second round and third round and fourth round and fifth round, the Kimura sweep, not there. Sandhagen responded to that quite well by sort of stepping into it so that Font didn't have an angle to then push the arm up into the Kimura. The butterfly sweep, which is when you're underneath and you get your shins into the thighs and you lift them up from there. And then a buggy choke, which is a meme submission. As a means of getting up, fine. As a means of finishing a fight, probably not really there. So yeah, we saw the limitations of Rob Font on the ground, that he got out-wrestled by Cory Sandhagen, who of course has implemented it into his fighting style in the last few fights really well, opened up his striking as well, but he just didn't really need to do that here. Maybe he had an injury, as he said. And we saw some of the classic Sandhagen moves, touch, jab, 1-1, and then the two behind it, and like that sort of like sweeping straight that he throws from there. Just a left hook off the lead hand when in orthodox. Lovely. Font really didn't get anything off. Nothing of any note, nothing that my notes I can go through. But Sandhagen's striking looked lovely and fluid when we got to see it. But really, it was all about the wrestling from Sandhagen, where he used heavy top pressure and just took rounds away from Font. And when we got to like the end of the second round, when we got to the end of the second round, say it properly, and he'd wrestled him all through that round. I'm like, oh well, Sandhagen's just going to do this for the next 3 rounds. And I found it weird in the fifth when Font, had a bit of a rocket shot up his arse by his coach, and then he goes out and immediately tries to take Sandhagen down. Just wasn't there. Just was not there for Font. And I think that's the end of his little resurgence in bantamweight. I think he can still finish a lot of good guys in that division, but against the Sandhagen, it's just not there. It's just not there for him. And as for Sandhagen, well, if Aljamain Sterling retains against Sean O'Malley in 2 weeks, that title will probably become vacant, and Merab Dvalishvili probably will fight for the title, and I think Cory Sandhagen is the guy to face him. I mean, that's if the UFC give Merab the fight. I mean, maybe they won't because of his refusal to fight Aljamain. In which case you could do Sandhagen versus Cejudo, in which I will say right now, I probably would favour Sandhagen in that fight. That's right, listeners, I said Sandhagen to win that fight. Rest of his cards, Tatiana Suarez finishes Jessica Andrade with a guillotine choke. Look good from Suarez, but I think Andrade is sort of done. Just not great anymore. It's just not there. The pep's not there. I don't think the motivation's there either. This is her 4th fight of the year already. Man, she's really enjoying that new contract, isn't she? Suarez moves on into title contention. Got to get her a couple more wins. I'm going to say it, Mackenzie Dern will be an interesting one. Will she take Dern down? Will she dive in there? Probably. I'd be well up for seeing that. What else was on this main card of interest? Not a lot, but Dustin Jacoby, that was a nice finish. Used the left hook as in check. Oh god, I can never say this guy's name. I'm not going to say it. Kennedy came wading in. Left hook, missed, which then told him that the right straight was there, and he boom shakalaka hit that right straight on and sent him down. Good finish there for Dustin Jacoby. Reasonable striker at light heavyweight. Listen, listeners, this is a very short episode. I just want to get it out there for you, get my thoughts and feelings out there on the fights. Yeah, maybe a bit negative overall, but listen, they can't all be winners, can they? Hopefully me and Tom will be back next week to preview the Vicente Luque versus Rafael dos Anjos fight night card. Ooh! Hopefully there's something decent on there along with that main event, which I like a lot. Hopefully it's not just RDA wrestling Luque to death. Right, listeners, we'll be back then. Contact us at holdonbrother69@gmail.com. Leave a comment if you wish. Like, subscribe. Get in there if you want. Or if you don't want to, then don't. Right, have a good one. And have a lovely Sunday. Goodbye.